No worries.
Sorry about this.
Okay.
That's the better way to do it. Okay, there we go.
Well, the journey to understand what Nibiru means and represents and what effect it is having and will have on the earth, that's a long journey. I thought I would present this photograph. It was taken in Cincinnati, in Ohio, in the United States, sometime in October 2019. And what we see here is sunrise slash Nibiru rise over Cincinnati. It's a wonderful photograph. Don't know what the locals thought when they saw this. Maybe they dismissed it as a hallucination. God only knows. In the United States, Nibiru, in the northern hemisphere, generally speaking, Nibiru appears at the 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock position of the sun, the solar dial. Here in the southern hemisphere, it appears at the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock position. And as stated last week or the week before, we're going to be seeing more of these photographs as we get closer to the hour of the pole shift. Next slide, please. This is the prediction, the Zenith prediction about how the Earth will look, the new Earth, after the pole shift. On the top two images, we can see the North Pole is just off the bulge of Brazil there, where it bulges into the Atlantic. And the South Pole will be around Sri Lanka, or I've heard it's just south of Sri Lanka. The equator in the bottom two images, you can see that it passes close to where New Zealand is now, or actually New Zealand, I don't think it's actually on the map. I can't see it, but anyway, where we are in Victoria is predicted our climate will shift to be something like that of northern New South Wales or southern Queensland. So it's going to get a lot warmer for us and probably a lot colder for Queensland if that map is anywhere near accurate. We shall see. Next slide, please. Okay, B sent out a message last week after the talk, and she asked, would Nibiru have anything to do with this? Now, I don't know where the source is, but she presented this info. NASA is monitoring a vast, mysterious magnetic anomaly growing between South America and Southwest Africa. Next slide, please. All right, I'm not going to read all of this, but anyway, it's a vast region of weakened magnetic intensity. It's known as the South Atlantic Anomaly, or SAA. Okay, the SAA is like a dent in Earth's magnetic field. It does significantly affect satellite and spacecraft, including the International Space Station. Interesting. Okay, within this anomaly, the protective magnetic field is weaker, so it allows solar particles to penetrate deeper into Earth's vicinity. And these particles can disrupt satellite electronics, cause data loss, et cetera, et cetera. To avoid damage, operators often shut down sensitive systems when spacecraft through the SAA. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, that when they're orbiting around in the spacecraft, they've got to shut down their sensitive systems because they're worried about the anomalies posed by the SAA coming all that distance from the Earth. Interesting. I'm going to pass the next paragraph because we're going to go into that a little more specifically, and the last two. Now let's go to the next slide. Now this is the scientific, quote unquote, explanation, quoting from these previous, the last two paragraphs in the previous slide. The SAA's root cause lies in Earth's molten outer core, where swirling iron generates the planet's magnetic field. Okay, that's interesting. It sounds pretty logical to me. This is the official explanation from the scientists, so we should believe it, right? But in the very next sentence, they say, however, the presence of a dense region deep under Africa, the African large low shear velocity province, I have no idea whatsoever what that is, may distort this process, weakening the field above. Well, that's interesting. This appears to be a backflip from the above explanation. So in one sentence, they present an explanation, and in the next sentence, they say, well, it might actually distort the process. So here's an alternative explanation. in the next sentence. Interesting. And finally, despite lingering questions, evidence suggests the SAA is part of a recurring magnetic cycle dating back at least 11 million years. Okay. Well, maybe there's questions the scientists simply cannot answer. So we'll just shove the whole matter back 11 million years and be done with it, right? And on to the next subject. So, okay, here's a Zetatalk explanation from September 2020. The South Atlantic anomaly is on the move. Mankind is clueless. That's a good statement. The Zetas, however, are happy to explain why the anomaly, referred to as a second magnetic South Pole. And here's a clue. It's a second magnetic South Pole. And you may be aware that from the North Magnetic Pole, magnetons and charged particles emit. They sort of circle the Earth and they're sucked in at the South Pole. Oh, and the South Pole is migrating toward Africa. And the magnetic North Pole is migrating towards Siberia. So it actually has to do with polar shifting, magnetic polar shifting. We didn't hear anything about that in the scientific explanation. They continue, the South Atlantic anomaly has been noted as an attractant for microwaves, which flow with electrons and magnetons. And there were satellite images from 2017 showed the microwave flows pointing to the South Atlantic anomaly and the location where the Zetas predicted new land would emerge during the hour of the pole shift. Oh, interesting. There's a Zetatalk prediction. New land coming up somewhere between the tip of South America and Antarctica in the near future. Interesting. Next slide, please. Now, why is the South Atlantic anomaly migrating toward India? Well, that's a long way. It's a long way from the SAE to India, so that's a long journey, man. Now, it's because after the pole shift, and the new South Pole is said to be located south of India, south of Sri Lanka. So the magnetic South Pole is located somewhere over India. The pressure on the Earth as Nibiru approaches shows the path that the Earth's magnetosphere will follow during the hour of the pole shift. First, pressure on the magnetic North Pole to locate over the bulge of Brazil, because the new North Pole will be off that bulge in the Atlantic Ocean. The crustal shift is pushing Brazil toward that location. And so it's all to do with pole migration. And that in turn is affected by the daily Earth wobble, which we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now we see the bottom diagram there. Don't forget that little line between the African plate on the east and the South American plate on the left. That is where the Atlantic Ocean is expanding as the Pacific compresses. Next slide, please. And at the bottom of the tip of South America, there is the Scotia Plate. Now that has a very key, it's a small plate. Most people had never heard of it. I certainly hadn't heard of it. And it intersects with some even smaller plates, Sandwich Plate, Shetland Plate. It adjuts on the much larger Antarctic Plate and, of course, the South American Plate. And there's all this movement going on. And that's where the new land is predicted to appear just before or just after the pole shift. Interesting. Next slide, please. And here is, once again, the prediction of the new North Pole off the tip of Brazil, the bulge of Brazil, and the new South Pole off the southern part of India or Sri Lanka. So it's more than just the physical poles, it's also the magnetic poles. So what we're looking at in this predicted scenario of the polar shift is a multi-layered, multi-dimensional process. We got the actual physical poles, but we also have the magnetic poles, which are migrating now, are starting to migrate, and that's why we're seeing these anomalies over the South Atlantic anomaly. But of course, when you're covering up the fact that Nibiru exists, when you're covering up the fact that there will be a pole shift, you can't acknowledge any of that. And that's the problem. The Nibiru cover-up is in effect. Next slide, please. Okay, the south anomaly lies near the location the Zetas have predicted for new land. So the Antarctic plate will pop up there between the tip of South America and the tip of Africa. Okay. Now, is there some relationship between this anomaly and the emergent new land that will appear nearby when the Antarctic plate pushes up between the tip of South America and South Africa during the pole shift? This spot has been pulling apart, creating a void between the great South American and African plates over the decades as Pangaea has pulled apart. Next slide. Pangaea was the original unicontinent of Earth many millions of years ago. And since that time, don't ask me how long ago, several millions, I don't know the exact figure. The continents have been separating, moving this way, moving that way, whatever. So this relates to the early formation of the Earth and the unicontinent, the singular continent of Pangaea in that far distant past of Earth's history. Next slide, please. All right. The normal position for the Earth's magnetic south pole moves from its location near Tasmania to the location of the South Atlantic anomaly. As the Earth wobble, that's a daily Earth wobble, has worsened, the South Atlantic anomaly has likewise increased in strength. So it's all related to the daily Earth wobble, which has been covered up by the authorities because they don't want people to panic. They cover up Nibiru, they cover up the coming pole shift, so they basically want us to remain dumb and dumber and just accept whatever nonsense the scientific community chooses to broadcast. Next slide, please. Okay. The electromagnetic pulse, and we talked about EMPs in the last presentation, disrupt mankind's electronics by a brown outer pulse, often ruining the equipment in the process. And it has brought down several planes in the past 15 years, as we detailed then. I'm not going to go over that now. Satellites or the equipment aboard the ISS are vulnerable. Okay. So if you're up there in that spacecraft and orbiting over the SAA, you may have some problems. Oh, by the way, didn't we hear about those astronauts being stranded in the International Space Station for some months? I think it was October, November, and they couldn't get them down until I think February.
Yep.
Do you think there's something going on that NASA isn't telling us? Could that possibly be that NASA is trying to cover up some information that they don't want you or me or the common person to know? Gee, I wonder. Next slide, please. All right, I got this from Chandra just a few days ago. A magnitude 6.4 earthquake was reported 13 minutes ago south of Argentina. This follows a magnitude 7.4 earlier this morning, triggered a tsunami warning on some South American coast. 12 aftershocks so far were bigger than magnitude 5. This latest one is about the biggest that would be expected. So that's an event. Really wasn't reported in the media because they don't really report that stuff anymore. Not here anyway. I'm sure it was reported in Chile and Argentina, but maybe not so much elsewhere. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm not going to read all of this, but in May of 2024, when some rising, that's the new land between South America, tip of South America and Antarctica, some rising occurred then. Now, 50 to 83 foot waves were recorded in that region, known as Godzilla, the mythical creature that rose from the sea. This incident remained unexplained by conventional science. And there was some flooding in Brazil, which showed that the land had heaved nearby, the land under the sea, that is, had heaved nearby. Now, a series of plate movements have once again shown what God intends to deliver during the hour of the pole shift. Plate movements are still in process during the South American roll, and the African roll is lobbing its knob to the east, and et cetera, et cetera. Antarctica has nowhere to go but into the South Atlantic, and that's where the new land will appear, according to Zetatalk, either just before or during or after the pole shift itself. But of course, the authorities are covering all this up. Don't want you and I to know about it. Speaking of Antarctica, have you heard that the ice shelf there has actually been increasing since 2021? Well, you probably haven't heard that because that little fact rips to shreds the global warming theory that the establishment has been spouting for decades. And personally speaking, I think I read an article a year or two ago on some alternative or presumed alternative outlet, and they're saying, well, the Antarctic ice shelf is actually increasing, and I'm saying to myself, is this really? Is this real? Is it really so, or is it just some wild conspiracy? Well, it turns out that the author of that article was right, and my thoughts were incorrect because I didn't know that since 2021, the ice shelf in Antarctica in certain parts has been increasing. I really didn't know that. Next slide, please. This is from the New York Post, which is sort of an alternative media outlet in that part of the world. The Antarctic ice sheet has shown signs of record-breaking growth after decades of contributing to global sea rise. The AIS gained mass at a rate of 108 gigatons per year. That's between 2021 and 2023. And that's a notable reversal from the rapid loss seen in previous years. Now, they're talking about 4 major glacier basins, and I've never heard of any of those, have been losing the most ice, discharge, and surface melting responsible for most of the loss. But between 2021 and 2023, those glaciers experienced significant mass gain, reversing the accelerated loss they had undergone. So guess what, folks? Not global warming down there, not now anyway. The ice is increasing, but you're not hearing that in the mainstream. Okay, and this is the final slide. I'm not going to go into the details. It's very complex, hard to get your head around, but basically it's due to Nibiru and the North Pole of Nibiru pointing at the Earth from various angles and the Earth's pole responding, and that's why you get this very complex, very hard to understand interaction between Nibiru and the Earth. But the final sentence, yes, I will read. Thus, the global warming advocates are embarrassed by their inability to explain Antarctica returning to a freeze. And of course, the powers that be don't want this to be known because that would really shred the global warming theory. Okay, well, that's it. Any questions or comments before we bid you farewell and wish you a happy Vesak for next week?
When you were talking about it, Zachary, these sort of, the parts of the land diving underneath, parts of it splitting, new land coming up.
Yeah.
I just had this strange image of, if you've ever put a jumper on and you put it on, then you realize you've got it back to front, and rather than taking the whole thing off, you try and rearrange your arms while you're wearing it. I had this sort of image of the Earth trying to rearrange itself in its outer new garment of the tectonic plates in their new positions. And
that's not a bad image. In fact, I think it's an inspired one. Actually, I'd never thought of that. But yeah, I think you're onto something, Chandra. Yeah.
Well, I have a particular dress that's got a petticoat sewn inside the dress, and sometimes after I've washed it, I have trouble trying to get the petticoat to go in the right place, and I can get myself in a terrible state trying to put this dress on because the outside doesn't match the inside. Yeah. And it's, when you talk about the poles and this magnetic energy, you think, well, it's rearranging itself while trying to stay as one vehicle, one planet, not
That's exactly right.
Not explode.
Exactly right.
Very confusing. Yeah. Other thing that I wanted to say was people may not know that if you're interested in an online VSAC meditation, heartflowworldwide.org has one on their website, and you can access it on Tuesday. Even though the actual VSAC is early in the morning on Monday, the public...
it's early in the morning on Tuesday.
Yes. So it'll be...
2:55 a.m. Tuesday. The exact time of VSAC.
Yeah, but I think it's Tuesday night that it'll be accessed. I think the suggested time is 7:30 on Tuesday night to tune in. If you can't do 7:30 on Tuesday night, it'll probably be there Tuesday and into Wednesday morning, but it won't stay there forever. So you need to access it if you'd like to. Yeah. Okay, very interesting week that we have. Yes, to be continued.
Happy Vesak, my friends, and good night for now.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Lovely to see you.
Okay.